All right, so get ready for a deep dive, you guys. We're going into spooky stories. We're looking at 3 trick-or-treating stories from Mr. Nightmare's YouTube channel. And I know some of you might be like, "Ugh, more ghost stories?" But these really aren't like your typical, campfire stories. There's something about them that's like really real. The details, it's almost like you're there.
Yeah, you're right about that. The thing that really gets me about these stories, it isn't so much like the ghosts or the supernatural stuff. It's more about like the stuff that we all worry about, like, am I safe? Can I trust people? And that, that line between what's normal and what's like truly scary. That's what really gets me.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit it right on the head. Okay, so let's jump into the first story, The Creeper and the Chasers. It's 2007, and we've got these high school freshmen. They're all dressed up like Super Mario characters, right? They're out trick-or-treating. It's late, but they want more candy.
It's like totally relatable, right? It's a fun night. You're out with your friends. Maybe you stay out a little later than you should. It's Halloween.
Exactly. And so they get to this one house, and what do you know? Candy bowl's empty. Total bummer, right? But then, just as they're about to leave, this older guy, he comes to the door. And he's like, "Hey, come on in. I got more candy inside." And immediately, like, alarm bells are going off for the narrator. He's got this bad feeling, so he convinces his friends to just get out of there.
That's so interesting, right? It's not just some stranger offering candy. It's like about trusting your gut, that feeling you get sometimes that something's just not right, even if you can't really explain it.
It is. And it's funny, we're always told, like, be polite, trust adults and all that. But this story, it's almost saying, hey, sometimes those gut feelings, they're there for a reason.
Totally. And it's like the story really makes that point, because as they walk away, they start hearing these footsteps behind them, like in the woods, behind the houses,
Oh, man. Just thinking about that gives me the creeps. Being chased in the dark, like, that's a fear we all have, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like built into us. And Mr. Nightmare, the way he builds the tension in that scene, it's amazing. Like, the footsteps are getting closer. You don't know who it is. It's like a slow burn. It really gets under your skin.
And it keeps going. Like, one of the friends, he tries to yell to scare whoever's following them, but it just makes things worse.
It's such a normal reaction, though, right? You're trying to, like, take control of the situation, but it's totally out of control.
Absolutely. And finally, they make it to one of their houses and rush inside. They're like, we're safe. But then they start hearing noises downstairs.
That's where, like, Mr. Nightmare, he's really playing with us. He makes us think, like, oh, the danger's gone, but then, bam, he throws in this twist. It makes you question everything.
I know. And the freakiest part, it wasn't their friend's family downstairs. The story, it just ends and you're left with all these questions.
Totally. It's like, who was in that house? What were they doing? And it gets even weirder. Mr. Nightmare, he mentions later that he texted his friend, and it sounds like something was really wrong in that house. So it's almost like this story saying, even if you escape, the danger might not be over.
Ugh, that is so creepy. It's like, when you watch a really good horror movie, it's not real, but you still can't shake that, like, uneasy feeling.
It's deeper than that, Like, maybe the world isn't as safe and predictable as we think. Even in normal places, like, there could be darkness hiding just below the surface.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. Okay, so the next story, the van and the near kidnapping. I think this one's going to hit close to home for some people, especially parents. So the narrator, he's 18 now, and he's taking his younger relatives trick-or-treating. It's a quiet neighborhood, the suburbs. They're just about to call it a night, and then this white van pulls up next to them.
Oh, a white van. Talk about instant danger, right? Like, it's crazy how something so normal can become so scary just because we associate it with, bad stuff. It really is it's like a symbol for every parent's worst nightmare. Yeah.
Right. Ugh, it's terrifying. Okay, so the driver of the van, he actually seems pretty friendly at first. He's like, "Hey, can you do me a quick favor?" He asks the narrator to hold his passenger seat up while he fixes something. And, the narrator, he's a little hesitant, but he ends up agreeing to help.
That hesitation, though, I think that's, like, really important, It shows that even though he's young, he's not totally clueless. Like, there's a part of him that knows this could be bad news.
Oh, totally. But sometimes, even when we get those feelings, we just brush them off, like maybe we don't want to be rude or we tell ourselves we're just being paranoid.
Yeah, and that's what's so messed up about these situations. They start out totally normal, and then boom, like everything changes in a second. It's like from normal to terrifying. Just like that.
And that's exactly what happens in this story. So the narrator's inside the van, and suddenly he hears his little relative screaming outside. He gets out of the van, and it's total chaos. Someone's trying to kidnap one of the kids.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Like the adrenaline, the fear, the need to protect them?
I know, it's terrifying. But then, just when it seems like it's all over, this homeowner comes out with a rifle, he fires a warning shot, and the kidnappers, they take off running. Everyone's safe. But, the release, it doesn't last long.
No, because the next day, the narrator, he sees this news report. It's about a missing child in the same area. And it hits him, what if the kidnapping he saw is connected to this missing kid?
Oh, God, that just sends chills down my spine. To be so close to something so awful and knowing someone else might not have been so lucky.
Yeah, it's like survivor's guilt, right? It's a really heavy thing to deal with. You're happy you're alive, but you also feel terrible that someone else might not be.
It's so true. It's not just about escaping physically. It's the emotional stuff, the scars that these experiences leave behind, It makes you think about how fragile safety is, how easily things can change.
Totally. It's like a reminder,
Yeah.
that bad things can happen anywhere. Even in places we think are safe, we still got to be careful.
Absolutely. It really makes you question, who can you trust? How do you protect yourself and the people you love? Especially when danger can just come out of nowhere, All right, so the last story we're going to talk about, it takes place in a totally different setting. We're going to rural Pennsylvania. And, the narrator and his friends, they're used to trick-or-treating being a little more spread out,
The countryside. Isolated, dark, the perfect setting for a scary story, right?
Mm.
It's like it plays on our deepest fears, being alone in the dark in a place where no one can hear you.
Yeah, and there's something about it, that emptiness, no streetlights, no people around. It just makes everything creepier. So the narrator and his friends, they start out at a few houses, get some candy, normal stuff. But then they come to this dirt road, not many houses around, and that's where things start to get weird. They find this house with torches leading up to the porch, but the candy bowl's empty.
It's like the story is setting a trap or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, come on in, we got candy. But really, there's something way worse waiting.
I know, right? It's like that feeling of, what's it called? False sense of security. It's like when you feel safe, but really you're not, It happens in real life too, not just in stories.
Yes, you explained it perfectly. And in this story, it gets even worse. There's a sign on the door. It says, come to the backyard for more candy, but enter at your own risk.
Oh, man, if I saw that sign, I'd be out of there.
Yeah.
But, of course, they're curious, so they go into the backyard.
It's like classic horror movie stuff, right? Like the group of teenagers who ignore all the warning signs. And then, bad things happen.
Totally. It's like, haven't they seen enough scary movies to know that's a bad idea? So the backyard, it's just as creepy as the front of the house. There's one porch in the middle and a riddle on the back door, but no candy. And the narrator, he starts noticing all these weird things, like a cracked window, figures in the shed, and upstairs windows.
It's all about the details, They build up the suspense, make you feel like something's really wrong, even if you don't know exactly what it is.
And what's even weirder is that his friend is totally oblivious. He's excited about the adventure while the narrator's freaking out.
Yeah, it's like fear is different for everyone, right? What one person finds exciting, another person finds terrifying. And our imaginations, they can make those feelings so much stronger.
So the tension just keeps building and building, and then bam! A masked figure comes out of the woods with a machete and charges at one of the friends.
Oh my God. Talk about primal fear, right? The mask, the sudden attack, the weapon. It's like all our deepest fears all at once. And a machete, I mean, come on, that's brutal. It's not just a threat, it's serious.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that sometimes our fears, they're real, The world can be a dangerous place, and sometimes evil doesn't hide in the shadows.
Exactly. And the story doesn't end there, right?
Yeah.
The police go to investigate, and they find out the house has been empty for months. No one was supposed to be there.
It's like, who is that masked guy? What was he doing there? The story leaves you with so many questions, and that's almost scarier than having all the answers,
Yeah.
It really makes you think, are we ever really safe? Even in our own homes, it's like these stories, they get under your skin.
Yeah, they stick with you. It's like that line between normal life and something truly scary. It's thinner than we think,
So we've definitely gone to some dark places today with these trick-or-treating stories. Each one had its own twist, its own way of messing with your head. What are some of the things that really stood out to you?
Well, one thing that I keep thinking about is trusting your gut. Remember that first story with the guy at the door? That bad feeling the narrator had? It might have saved them, you know?
It's true, and it makes you wonder how many times we ignore those feelings, you know? Like those little warning signs, we just brush them off.
We tell ourselves we're overreacting, but these stories, they show us what can happen when we don't listen to that voice inside, you know?
And the second story, the one with the white van, it's terrifying. It's like 1 minute everything's fine, the next minute your whole world's turned upside down. It's a reminder that we can't always control what happens to us.
Yeah, and it makes you question everything you thought you knew about being safe, right? Like, we think we're safe in our neighborhoods with our families, but this story shows us that danger can be anywhere.
And that feeling of not knowing who to trust, it just gets worse in that last story. With the abandoned house, it's like it's playing on all our fears of the unknown.
And it's like, we think abandoned places are empty, just echoes of the past, you know? But this story shows us they can be dangerous too.
It's like a reminder that even when we think we're alone, we might not be.
You know, I think all these stories together, they're about more than just Halloween. They're about those deep down fears we have about the world. Fears about safety, about trust, about the darkness that's out there, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like Halloween, it gives us a way to face those fears.
Yeah.
In a way that's like safe, you know?
Exactly. And even though these stories are scary, they also remind us to be careful, to trust our gut, to be aware of what's going on around us, to remember that danger can be anywhere, even when we least expect it.
Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive into these creepy trick-or-treating stories. What's your final thought for our listeners? Like, what should they take away from this, especially as we're getting closer to Halloween?
You know, I think have fun, enjoy Halloween, but don't forget to be careful. Remember what we talked about today. Trust your gut, be aware of your surroundings, and maybe, just maybe, leave that porch light on a little longer this year.
That's good advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the spooky side of Halloween. And to all our listeners, stay safe, have a great Halloween, and maybe think twice before you go walking down that dark road, you know?